February of 2010, Chris and Kathleen Blackie came to Vermont to become co-pastors of the First Baptist Church of South Londonderry.
August of 2010, the original building that was here, that was built in the 1830s, was destroyed by a fire. So we have been in the long process of rebuilding, both obtaining an adjacent property and then rebuilding the building and raising some additional funds to do that since 2010. We actually began construction in 2014 of the building you see behind me now.
Insurance paid for the over $1 million replacement of the original building. The church has been seeking more money.
Our insurance basically covered the old building, but a lot of code updates, many of which we're grateful to have, cost excess money. Certainly, the new building is fully sprinklered. We don't have, as all of you who live in Londonderry know, we don't have municipal water here, so that means we have to have a lot of water storage on site. That was an expensive process, and to make the building fully handicap accessible, which is great and exactly what we'd want to do, also requires quite a bit in the way of financial resources. So that money has, so a lot of the fundraising money has gone towards making sure that we can have a building that's safe and a building that's accessible to everybody.
That's great. And how is the fundraising going?
Well, actually, this year particularly, we received a very generous matching donation grant from a local couple who matched the first $50,000 we raised 2-for-1, so they matched that with a $100,000 gift, and we have about $15,000 left to go on our second half of that, which they're going to match 1-for-1. So when we finish raising the second half of that $100,000, they're going to match that with an additional $50,000, which should give us enough in the way of funding to complete most of the building, with the exception of perhaps a little bit of work in the kitchen and things like that, which we'll continue to work on over the next year or so.
50 or 60 congregants come to a typical Sunday out of a total membership of over 90. Many have generously helped pay for the new church, which with this will be the new sanctuary.
But we've also had some very generous people from outside as well who've helped out, and also some people from churches both kind of near and far. We've had our church is part of a region that includes churches in New Hampshire and Vermont, and we've had some very generous donations from a lot of those churches and people in those churches as well.
In August, Vermont Interfaith Power and Light, through the Katie Gerke Memorial Program, granted $9,000 to the church for building an energy-efficient building to replace its original building.
In this case, for us to be able to kind of go above and beyond even what's required by code for energy, which we've tried to do. We've also worked with Efficiency Vermont on that as well.
Daniel Pratt, an architect, did most of the design. Pratt is also a member of the First Baptist Church in Rutland and started helping just after the fire to help the church submit its claims to the insurance company.
And then also, particularly as we've gotten towards the finishing phase inside, we've also worked with local contractors and carpenters and things on some of their vision for what the building would look like.
Yeah, I was going to ask, who's been doing the construction?
The exterior of the building, which is the finished portion here, was all done by John Russell at Russell Construction out of Rutland, and they were a general contractor. But then after they completed the outside of the building about a year and a half ago, we've been general contracting inside and working with basically with all sorts of different people. Some local, some not quite as local, depending on the scope of the work. The stained glass windows are actually Vermont Salvage up in White River Junction. About 3 weeks after the fire, we got word that there were some stained glass windows they had there. They had been pulled out of a church in upstate New York that had shut down. And so we went up and looked at them, and they were very similar to our old windows, and it just seemed like this was the perfect thing. God had just put them in place. So they actually were the first part of the new building we had designed. So we bought them about a month after the fire. So.
Wow.
There is plans for a steeple. It's all the construction inside is done for a fiberglass steeple to go on top at some point. That is the plan. Right now we're really focused on trying to be able to occupy the building and use the building, but certainly in the future, that may be a few years down the road. That would be one of the things that wouldn't be included in the fundraising we're currently doing. But a few years down the road, we certainly have plans to put a steeple back on top of the building.
Hope is to occupy the main floor of the building later this year.
We basically have the finances we need to be able to occupy the main level of the building. It's just a matter of getting the work done, which we're doing some with contractors. We're doing some as much as we can with volunteer work as well. So, but we're making progress. Hopefully by late fall or sometime early winter, we'll be in the building. So.
In the years since the fire, the church has held services mostly in the old town hall after starting in the Londonderry office building.
We've been very thankful to the community as they've supported us through this time. It's a real challenge in a small community to rebuild, to undergo this kind of rebuilding campaign and rebuilding project, and people both inside the church and certainly outside the church have been very supportive of us as we've done it. We've very much appreciated the way the community supported us, and we hope that as a church we are as much of a blessing back to the community in that regard.
GNAT thanks Lee Crone for the use of his photographs of the church before and during the fire. For GNAT News, this is Bruce Frauman.